So you bought a water jet. Let's get to it. I'm Chris with WARDJET. This is how we'll shut down the machine. First thing we're going to do is put the machine in e-stop. And then simply close the software and power down Windows as you normally would. Secondly, we're going to come over to the side of the machine and we're going to turn the power off at the main disconnect. And we'll also turn the power off to the pump disconnect. From here you can turn off the air and the water, and that's the shutdown procedure. Now we're going to proceed with the startup. It's like the shutdown, just in reverse. We're going to turn on the air and the water, and then we're going to turn on our main power disconnects with our pump and our machine. From here we want to come back to the controller, start Windows back up, and then open Move, the machine's operating software. Now the move is completed, it's startup. We're going to go through clearing the hardware e-stop. I just pulled out the e-stop and I'll use the mouse to clear the software e-stop. Once that's cleared, we're prompted to home the machine. I'm just going to press home and let the machine home. You'll notice that the Z carriage is already close to the home position. That helps speed up the homing process. Otherwise, it's time for a coffee break. While I'm standing here, I turned our hopper down to 0 because we lose air in our shop at night. So I'm going to turn it back to its preset value and check the line to make sure there's no abrasive in it. If you do have abrasive in the line because you forgot to move this to 0 when you lost air, you'll just simply pull off the inlet nut and drain the abrasive before you begin cutting. If you forgot where your abrasive was, it's a good idea to reweigh your abrasive. So let's close our door so our outputs can be activated. We're going to grab a scale and a cup. I'll turn the scale on. It's at 0 because the cup's here. If it wasn't, you would hit tare to zero it out with the cup on it. Now we come over to our Outputs tab, to the Timer section, to the 30-second abrasive timer. Remove the abrasive line and turn the output on for 30 seconds. Once it stops, your timer is done, then we can weigh our abrasive. We want to be right around there for a 10-30 orifice nozzle combination. So we're good to go. Now that our machine is home, we need to reconnect our abrasive line. We know that our abrasive is on. Let's check our bulk feed hopper. We've got a couple hours of cutting in here, so I'm going to leave this go for now. Otherwise, feel free to fill up your hopper. I do want to verify that the pump's water is in fact on. Now we can load a part. Let's get to actually loading a part. It's pretty simple. We're gonna hit the part button. I already have mine in my library, otherwise we can drag and drop from your File Explorer or hit the plus button up top to open File Explorer. I'm just gonna double tap this This part, click anywhere on the screen and we see it's attached to the nozzle. Using the right side control button, I could just use the keys to move my cutting head around and control page down to bring my head down. Let me get a little closer to where I want to be. Let's check the pump. I'm just going to start the pump remotely. Turn the power button on. There it goes. I'm going to look for leaks on the ground at my high pressure fittings. We've got a few fittings on the back of the tank. None of them are dripping. And I'm going to cross over and see if we have any leaks on them. I don't see any drips or anything. It's important to tighten up the fittings right away. You'll notice that every fitting has a weep hole. So if water's coming out of whatever weep hole, the closest fitting needs some attention. It might just need tightened, or you could have had a failure. At this point in time, I'm going to make sure that the drain is open. It is. I'm going to set my Z height with the Apex 60. You likely have the height setter, so I'm just going to start the height setter routine to get my nozzle about 3 millimeters or an 1/8 inch off the material. There we go. I'm going to check to make sure we have 60,000 PSI. I want to double check to make sure the mini hopper is on. I'm going to turn my water and abrasive outputs on. You'll notice they turn blue, and in manual mode, they'll turn orange. Let me zoom in on my part here. Some other things to consider: your override value. If someone's changed it before, you might want to change it back. I'm just checking to make sure I'm at 100%. Lastly, my doors need to be up before I start cutting. So with all that in mind, let me hit the run button. When we're done cutting, I'm just going to raise the cutting head out of the way. We can open our doors. And since we're in our new water demonstration, I'm going to remove our maple leaf Axes WARDJET logo. If you need to change an orifice or a nozzle, let's go over that in our Apex 60 configuration. I went ahead and put the machine in E-stop so that I could just manually turn this to have better access. using a 13/16 wrench and a 1-inch wrench. Before we get going, it is very important that your pump is off and that you've ensured that you have 0 pressure on your lines. So following that, we'll loosen this connection. Okay. With some manipulation, this should just come right off. Should. The high pressure line's putting a little bit of torque on it, so I'm trying to match its pull, like so. We will need to remove the abrasive inlet hose and nut. I'm trying not to lose the washer, the O-ring rather. You'll notice I have something down below in case I actually drop something. Just gonna remove our splash guard. There's an O-ring down here that we'll need to remove, so it's easiest just to remove the nozzle nut first. To remove the O-ring. Now to remove the cutting head, we need a 5mm wrench. You'll take your 5mm wrench and just loosen this one just a little bit. Now this should just pull right out. With these parts, let's go over to the table. Take them apart. Now that we have our parts on this clean surface, we're going to take everything apart. Usually this gets kind of stuck in here, so I'm just going to tap it on something lightly, because it is brittle, it will shatter, to get it off. So here we have our nozzle, our collet, our nozzle nut, and then the O-ring for the nozzle nut. Now we take our abrasive body here and remove our abrasive inlet. Now by tapping this, you'll get the mixing chamber and the orifice out as well. Let me clean some of this stuff off. I want to make sure we don't have any abrasive where we're going to make water sealing connections. Okay. So to replace the orifice, you would basically need to take it down to this point anyways. You'll want to make sure everything is clean before reassembling it. Feel free to use an alcohol-based cleaner if you'd like, maybe a cotton swab or two, just to ensure you got all the abrasive out of here and everything's ready to go back together. Our mixing chamber lines up with our abrasive inlet. So as the abrasive comes in, it mixes from the water and comes out into the nozzle. It is important that these two meet up perfectly to reduce excessive turbulence. Before putting our abrasive inlet back on, we're going to get just a little bit of blue goop on here. And if you get too much, you're going to want to wipe off the end. We don't want blue goop adhering the abrasives to it. So just a little bit will do. Okay. With that hand tight, we're going to go ahead and put it back on the cutting head. I'm going to bring our blue goop with us. Let me arrange this so we can see this better. The flat side sets into this little groove here. So when you set this in place, let me turn it off to the side. You'll notice it doesn't set all the way in, and then when we straighten it up, it sets all the way down. It's very important to maintain alignment, that we ensure that this is pressed all the way in place. And then we give that a little snug. Now let me get a little bit of blue goop on the bottom of our swivel adapter and a little bit on the threads of the swivel adapter. The first thread being the most important one. And we'll get this back together hand tight. Okay. If you're having a hard time with this, feel free to loosen either of these two connections here to give yourself some more play. So once we get this set in place, I'm going to take my wrenches and get it a little tighter. And this will end up being tightened to around 30 to 50 foot-pounds in the end. I like to put my elbow around the actuator to keep it from moving, to help immobilize it. Now, let's put on our nozzle nut and nozzle. Alright, I'll grab our nozzle and our collet, leave it towards the tip, get it started in the nozzle nut, grab our O-ring, add a little bit of blue goop over here. Sometimes it's just easier to use your own fingers. We'll get this in here. I'm pushing on the bottom of the nozzle until it gets snug. And then I'm going to hand tighten this. Not just a little hand tight, right? Like pretty tight. And then the O-ring just helps keep abrasive from getting behind the nozzle nut. Since we're here, I'll put my splash guard back on. And then the last couple things I'll do is tighten the abrasive inlet. Using a 15/16 wrench, maybe. So I tightened our abrasive inlet with a 15/16 wrench, and I'm not going to connect our abrasive line quite yet. I want to run through the purging process to make sure we have all the air out of the line before we run a program or a part. We're not so much worried about the air, we're worried about the water following the air, hammering our orifice. So with that in mind, I'm going to get that close to where it needs to be. I'm going to release my E-stop, clear my software E-stop. I do need to put my doors up to turn my outputs on at this point. I'm going to jog the cutting head away from me. Lower it near the water so we're not so loud. I'm here to head one and manually turn the water on. We want the on-off valve to be open and ready so that no pressure builds up behind the orifice and water and air seamlessly purge. So let's head over to the pump. Water on. I'm going to turn the pump on in low pressure. Leaving the cutting head off, I can now look for leaks. simply come under the high pressure line. You should have a little bit of stock here. Push it back into the nozzle nut, and then tighten it down finger tight. We don't want any air getting into here. If air can get in there, water can get in there. And if water gets in there, you have a clump of abrasive in your way. So that's it. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for that, Chris. So now we're going to open up the floor to any questions you might have. Just kind of a brief overview, clearly, of some basic operations, how to get started on your WaterJet. If you got some questions below, feel free to put them in the questions area of the chat. Got a couple here that we'll go over and then cover any more that come in. The first one, Jack had asked how we set the C-axis to be able to freewheel or be able to move freely, like in the video. Best way to do that is once you put your machine into e-stop, it will disengage the motors to be able to move that around. Now, clearly, anytime we do that and disengage the motors, we're going to want to rehome the machine. Always good to do, especially if you're doing that type of maintenance on the head. Anyway, it is very easy to pull that a little bit off of where the machine thinks it is. So always a good idea to e-stop and then rehome your machine. And similar to what Chris had mentioned there, always good to have closer to your 0-0 point at the front of the machine where you're doing your maintenance. Otherwise, in the homing routine, it is going to move much slower to get to that 0-0 on all points. So nice to have, kind of a end of day or a maintenance position saved in your controller that you can get a little bit closer to 0-0, make your life a little bit easier after doing some maintenance. Next question was the blue goop. Chris had mentioned putting blue goop on all of those connections and trying to figure out what is the purpose of the blue goop. As Chris mentioned, you want to make sure you're not going to get abrasive in there to kind of muck up your threads. But blue goop is really an anti-seize that we use on all stainless to stainless connections. There's quite a bit of force that needs to be exerted in order to get a watertight seal. All of those high pressure connections do rely on a stainless face to stainless face connection, but we do use stainless threads. And if you've ever gotten two stainless pieces together with quite a bit of force, they can actually essentially weld themselves together to the point that you're going to have to pull both sides of the connection and replace. They will not come apart by whatever force you try to put on them. You'll actually end up breaking the fittings instead. So always good to have blue goop on there, making sure that it covers the entire bit of the thread or any kind of stainless to stainless connection or pairing that you're going to get in order to make sure you're going to be able to disconnect that whenever you want to. All right, and then last question I'm seeing coming in is how do you know when to change your nozzle? So clearly on the cutting head, the orifice is going to be pretty clear when you need to change that. That orifice is going to fail and you're not going to get the same quality of stream that you'd like to for the WaterJet. But the nozzle is a little more dependent on what your application is. So as your nozzle begins to wear, it will open up your your ID of your nozzle. So if you're starting with a 40 thousandths nozzle, it's going to start being able to be pinned right at 40 thou. But as you cut, it could be a few hours, it could be, a couple shifts, it will start to open up by a thou or two. Those tend to wear more in an oblong shape, if that makes any sense. It doesn't wear evenly on all sides. So if you do want to continue to keep using your nozzle and you're not quite as worried about tolerance, you say you're doing a near net shape or something like that, and it's going to go to a secondary process. It's always good maybe after the shift to take and rotate your nozzle maybe a quarter turn, and that would allow for even wear on your nozzle all the way around. But again, it's going to be pretty subjective on when you want to change that out. I've got people that let those things run forever as long as they can still cut with the same quality or the same speed that they'd like to. And then I've got other customers that are looking for high tolerance applications and they pin those out every 4 hours of cutting. And once they open up by 1 or 2 thou, they replace those nozzles. So again, that one's a little bit more subjective, but a lot of things learned really just give me a personal preference. So that's all the questions I'm seeing coming in right now. We appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the webinar. We will, if for some reason after the webinar something pops in your head, you have a question that we didn't get to, feel free to reach out to us. It's sales@wardjet.com. We're happy to answer all your questions, or if you have any questions on any other systems or things we offer, we're more than happy to walk through it with you and find the system that's right for you, or any sort of consumables or options you'd like to add to your existing machine. So again, thank you for taking the time today. We will see you next time, and have a great day.